Harry Thomas Byrne was born in 1895 in Nioda in McMinn County, Tennessee, which is equidistant from Knoxville and Chattanooga and about 3 hours from Atlanta. He's the oldest of 4 children born to James Lafayette and Feb Ensminger Byrne. What's interesting is that their marriage was a union that helped move this country forward into the 20th century and improve itself from its flaws in the past. Like, Feb's father was a Confederate veteran and disabled, and her family were, to quote Harry T. Byrne Jr., unreconstructed Democrats. On the other hand, Harry's father was a staunch Republican, and his grandmother was such a staunch Unionist that she refused to be buried next to her husband because he wound up being buried next to slavers and rebels, to quote her. So, nonetheless, they fell in love and got married and moved into the 20th century to raise their family. So Harry T. Byrne is the oldest of 4 children. He doesn't even have a college degree. He goes to Nioda High School, graduates when he's 16 years old. He works on the railroad, and he has some interest in maybe becoming a lawyer one day. But he'd always been interested in politics and the public sphere. And Feb said he had always been interested in things like that, and he knew all about the local politics all the way up to international politics. So it was no surprise that he ran for office as soon as the seat was open when he was only 22 years old, because you have to be 21 to run for the Tennessee House of Representatives and to vote at the time. So at age 22, he's running for the McMinn County State Representative seat in the Tennessee General Assembly. It's an open seat. He wins Republican primary, and then he wins the general election and goes on into the 1919 session. I'm trying to think of where to... Is that like an intro of his childhood? Okay. Now, by this time of Harry's election to the Tennessee House of Representatives, his father is deceased, and so was one of his sisters. So it's just him and his brother Jack, who was my great-grandfather, his sister Otha, and his mother Feb, all living in the antebellum farm mansion. He gets to Nashville in 1919, and he serves in the regular session. And he actually gets to vote on a constitutional amendment for the 19th Amendment, which is what he's known for. He actually voted to ratify the 18th Amendment for prohibition. And that was an overwhelming vote. That was back past something like 90-8. It was almost unanimous. That wasn't controversial at all. And given the fact that his great-grandmother was not only a staunch Unionist, also a staunch Prohibitionist, that was not a surprise for me to learn that he voted for that amendment. So later on Later on in the 1919 legislative session, he votes for Tennessee's limited suffrage bill. Now, thanks to our founding fathers, the federal government gives the power to create or define voter qualifications to the states. Because if you do that in the federal government and you have a bad system, it's a plague all over the place. But if you do it at the state level, if it's really bad, it can't go outside of the whole state, and you can have good things happen. And a lot of states had extended the right of suffrage to women going back to the 1870s. And Tennessee was a little late in that, but in 1919, Tennessee had what was called a limited suffrage bill, recognizing the right to vote for president and for municipal elections. Now, of course, there was no election for president in 1919, and there was only some local elections. Not many women were voting in Tennessee in 1919, but Harry voted for that, so he had obviously been on the record as having been a supporter of suffrage. When that session adjourns in April, he goes back home to Nioda, and he goes back to his old railroad job, thinking, I won't be back till 1921, because just like in Texas, they don't now, but at the time they met on alternate years in Nashville. And I wish they still did, but he goes back and thinks nothing else is going to happen, and then June 4th, 1919, the U.S. Congress finally proposes the woman suffrage amendment, known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, to the states for ratification. And if it's ratified, it will be the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. It passes out west pretty easily. Places like Wyoming and Idaho and Utah are going to go for it. In the upper Midwest, Illinois, Michigan and Wisconsin all went for it, but in the Deep South, it ran into a complete stonewall of opposition, and only Texas ratified in the Deep South. And I know they've kind of been a little bit culturally different, kind of Southwest and Southeast, the culture there, but the solid Southeast was vehemently against this thing, and they thought, we're going to have to get one of these southern states because we can't get any other part of every other part of the country's already voted for this thing. They had to have 36 of the then 48 states. Well, in August 1920, Tennessee Governor Albert Roberts calls the legislature back into session for an extraordinary session. Harry leaves home at age 24, still in his first term, planning to vote for the 19th Amendment. He had actually told his mother he believed in suffrage. When he gets over there, things begin to change. All sorts of telegrams start pouring in from all over, not just his district here in McMinn County, but all over the state, and even some people from outside of the country. There's letters being written to him from the two people running for president, and the chairman of the RNC, and President Wilson's Attorney General. Now, of course, they're writing to all the legislators. Harry's not special in this regard, but it shows you what all these outside influences are trying to do to all these legislators. Well, Harry's not listening to them. He's worried about his re-election. He's listening to his constituents. And there's 3 key telegrams that convince him that they're false. These were lies, but they convinced him that McMinn County was overwhelmingly against suffrage, which wasn't true. It was really split down the middle, just like we were in the Civil War, about 50-50, maybe a little bit of an edge towards the Union and a little bit of an edge towards anti-suffrage. The Republican Party chairman, B.J. Hornsby, said, I have canvassed, that old-fashioned term, I have canvassed over 500 of your friends, and not one of them wants you to vote for this. And then the election commissioner, a man named D.M. Owen, who was a Democrat, said something similar. Hundreds of people here, I talked to them, they don't want this. And even the county judge, who was a friend of Harry, he dismissed court and had a meeting and said they're all right up against it, you need to vote against this thing. So he has 2 prominent people from both parties, and the county judge and the election commissioner, all telling him they don't want it here. He's thinking, well, if I want to get reelected and keep serving in public service, I'm going to have to vote against this thing. I don't know my constituents' wishes. So he starts caucusing, there's another good old-fashioned word for it, caucusing with the anti-suffrage side. And for those of you that don't know, in Nashville in 1920, the pro-suffrage side wore a yellow rose in the lapel of their jacket or on the shirt or something like that on the dress, and the anti-suffrage side wore red. So Harry is palling around with all these anti-suffragists wearing a red rose, and all the suffragists have thought, well, we're not going to have his vote. He's been turned over to the dark side, if you will. Well, the session goes on for about a week and a half, and on Friday the 13th, which is sort of a coincidence here for the bad luck for the anti-suffragists, the state senator from McMinn County's district, which at the time included Bradley, McMinn, Roane, and Anderson counties. Those of you don't know, Anderson County is where they built the nuclear bomb during World War II. It was a very unusual district. It was staunch Republican, and Harry's mentor from right here in Athens was that senator. And he gave a speech on the floor of the Tennessee Senate saying, if we vote for this amendment, we're going to have interracial marriage, we're going to have African Americans, of course he didn't use that word, in the legislature, we're going to have anarchy, we're going to have women of the low neck, high skirt variety serving in the legislature, and we're going to have petticoat government, and I'm not going to stand for it. Well, that didn't really turn a lot of heads back then, but now it would get you out of town, as it should. So those are his speech is in the newspapers. I'll say that again. His speech is written down in all the newspapers. And Harry's mother, Feb Byrne, a college graduate, former teacher, successful farm manager, to quote Harry, a woman of international affairs. She reads this speech in the newspapers. She subscribes to the daily newspapers in Tennessee, the Chattanooga News, the Knoxville Sentinel, and the Nashville Tennessean, which also exists in some form or fashion today, and they're all the pro-suffrage papers. And she's very concerned that Harry's going to be swayed by his mentor, who helped him get elected, his mentor in the party, to vote against this thing. So, contrary to myth, She did not write an admonishing letter saying, "Don't bother coming home if you vote against this," threatening him. It was a letter with mostly local chit chat about things going on back home, but she works in her message of advice to a grown adult child of hers. Page 2, she says, "Hoorah, vote for suffrage and don't keep them in doubt. I noticed Candler's speech, it was very bitter." So we know that speech inspired her to write this letter. And then on page 6, she says, "Don't forget to be a good boy and help Mrs. Catt with her rats." And that's referring to Carrie Chapman Catt, who was the heir to Susan B. Anthony. Susan didn't have any children, and all of her suffrage workers called her Aunt Susan, and Carrie Chapman Catt was really her right hand. And so Feb was saying, "Help Mrs. Catt, get this amendment passed." And that letter is mailed out on Monday, August 16th, and I emphasize this because my great-grandfather, Jack Byrne, actually mailed this letter out for his mom. He went into town, he addressed it in ink, no street address, no zip code, just Harry's name and state capital Nashville, and it gets to him. Within 48 hours, it's mailed from a train station in Iowa by train and gets to Nashville, which is about for those of you that don't know, it's about a 3-hour drive west of Nauta. And a house page, little 10, 12-year-old boys deliver mail the morning of August 18th, and he gives Harry his mail, and amongst all the telegrams is a letter from his mother. And he reads it, and he has it in his jacket pocket. He goes onto the house floor. You have, I don't know how it is in Texas, but you have a gallery on either side of the House chamber, because there's 99 members. It's a fairly large room compared to the Senate room. All the suffragists are packed in the gallery. They couldn't do that this year for the reenactment because of the social distancing, but they were packed, beyond capacity, watching, wearing their yellow roses, and there were antis there too, some wearing red roses, and they saw Harry walk onto the House floor, and he's wearing that red rose, and they're thinking, "Oh gosh, we're beat. All we need is just one more vote, but we're beat. We're one vote short." And Harry's content to delay this amendment. He wants to do like a lot of great politicians do, don't do anything controversial, make everybody happy, ride out the storm, and get reelected, and then do whatever you want right after that, and maybe they'll forget next time. So he votes to table the amendment. They're thinking, "Oh, we'll bring this back up in January 1921, which wasn't going to happen. The momentum was stalling, and women wanted to vote in the 1920 election for president to decide the post-World War I world, the League of Nations, Harding or Cox for president. So it was now or never. And he votes yes to table, and it's a tie, 48-48, because there were 3 members missing and in the Tennessee House of Representatives. And then they have another vote, and he votes yes to tie, or yes, and then it's a tie, 48-48. And then the House Speaker, I noticed a fairly young man named Seth Walker, who was probably bought out or sold out to the liquor lobby, because Prohibition had just gone into effect that year. He says, "Okay, we're going to have a vote on, I have to use air quotes here, the merits of the resolution," meaning this is what actually matters. No more games, tabling. So he's thinking, we got enough to defeat this thing. It's going to go down. Well, then Harry realizes that without me, this isn't going to pass. I came here to do this originally. I'm going to take my mother's advice. I'm going to vote yes, and to heck with the consequences. And he voted yes. And they went down, everyone's getting excited, but they got to go down the rest of the alphabet, make sure everyone stays with them, and they did. And then it was 49-47. And pandemonium reigns in the House chamber. Women are screaming and dancing and shouting and throwing yellow roses in the air and draping their white, gold, and purple banners, down on the gallery there from the balcony. And Harry wants to get away. The governor's thinking, they're going to hurt this kid. 24 years old. He's probably been bribed or something, or he's been swayed. They're going to try to hurt him. Harry's not worried about that. Harry just wants to get away. So the sergeant at arms are ordered by the governor to watch Byrne. Pretend County was formed out of Loudoun County, right, Fred?
That's according to the mayor's office.
Yeah, it is.
Loudoun County was founded in 1870, McMinn County 1819, but still we were formed from Loudoun County according to them. So.
According to the newspaper.
Wow.
And their courthouse burned down, or not burned totally down, but it was burned substantially last spring of 19, the Loudoun County Courthouse. It was 1870, one of the oldest courthouses in the whole, I think it was the oldest post-Civil War courthouse in the state. And have you been there lately? Loudon, they're working on a store in the courthouse, but it's not going to be the same. It's almost a total complete facelift. It's really sad.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll go ahead and mention the book.
Yeah,
so.
because you're going to kick us out.
Yeah, and I've got to get to.
You got to get on the road.
There are several ways we have been celebrating this anniversary this year, but one way is to check out my book, Tennessee Statesman Harry T. Byrne, Woman Suffrage, Free Elections, and a Life of Service. I published it in August of last year in time for the anniversary. It's Harry's entire life story, all the myths about suffrage debunked, the true story told in full, and the rest of his life. He went on to serve in Tennessee government and did a lot of other remarkable things, and some things you may disagree with, but most of it I think you'll like, and all about his mother too. Has everything you need to know in there. You can get it at arcadiapublishing.com. You can also get it on Amazon. And if you want me to mail you a signed copy, you can email me at tyler@harrytbyrne.com. That's tyler@harrytbyrne.com. Another way you can celebrate is to buy a pair of socks from Crescent Sock Company, which is in Iota. It's a business that was founded under a different name, Crescent Hosier Mill, in 1902. Well, what's the connection? Harry's father, James Lafayette Byrne, was a co-founder of this business. It was now his first major industry, founded when Harry and our great-grandfather Jack were just little boys. It's still in operation today. Jack's granddaughters, this would be Harry T. Byrne's great nieces, are majority stockholders, and they run the company. The first women generation to do it. It's been around 118 years. They decided they wanted to honor their great-grandmother Feb Byrne with a new style of socks called Feb's Boutique. And they have women empowerment quotes on the sole of every sock, and of course, it has things like yellow roses and things like that. And currently there are 7 different patterns you can get. My favorite that my girlfriend has is gray with, I think, a pink heel and a yellow rose and some writing, I think, in gray. But there are several different styles you can get. You can go to febsboutique.com to purchase those. It's FEBBS boutique.com. And you can support a locally owned, family-owned small business and celebrate Feb Byrne's legacy and the 19th Amendment if you get some of those socks. And that's it. So there you go.
The monuments in town?
Oh, yes, I can do that. There are 2 murals in McMinn County honoring Harry and Feb Byrne and their role in the 19th Amendment ratification. One is unveiled in Iota back in January. It features Harry, Feb, and 3 prominent suffragists from different generations: Susan B. Anthony, Ida B. Wells, and Alice Paul. That's on the side of the Iota Library on Main Street, just down the road from the Iota Depot, our most historic building, where Harry's mother mailed the letter from. There's also a suffrage mural in Athens. It's on Watt Street as you come down the hill into it's the corner of Watt Street and College Street in Athens. As you come down the hill into downtown, you'll see a mural with Harry and Feb and several other suffragists, to give them the credit they deserve too. It's on the side of the Watt Street Market, where the mural faces College Street. And there's also a statue in Knoxville, Tennessee, about an hour from here, at the corner of Clinch Avenue and Market Street, next to the East Tennessee History Center, where the Harry T. Byrne letter from his mother Feb is stored at the McClung Collection on the 3rd floor. Right next door to that, at the corner, is the Byrne Memorial statue. It was unveiled 2 years ago by the Suffrage Coalition, headed up by Wanda Sobieski, and the sculpture was sculpted by Alan McQuire of Nashville. It depicts Harry seated at his desk and his mother standing over him with her arm on his shoulder, giving him guidance. Now, she wasn't with him in Nashville, it's just symbolic, but it's a great memorial statue that you'll have to stop and get a photo with whenever you're in downtown Knoxville. It's a great tribute to them, because they are not just Tennesseans, they're East Tennesseans.
There is a difference. Now, something's going on at the White House?
Yes. Crescent Sock Company and all the employees, and my mother, my aunt, who are the executives there, they are so honored. They've been selected, their business, Crescent Sock Company, has been selected by the White House to be part of President Trump's 4th annual Made in America Product Showcase. The White House picks 2 businesses from each state every year to bring their products to the White House lawn They're still going to do it this year. There'll be some distancing, no handshaking, things like that, but they're still going to be there. And Monday, October 5th, which is less than a week from when we recorded this, they're going to be in Washington, hopefully getting to meet the president and show their socks to everybody in attendance and get some good publicity. And I'm glad to see they're being recognized for being such a historic, enduring small business in this community.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
Time.
Yeah.
I think you should mention the all-women's thing in Naota.
Oh, sure.
She did.
Sure.
She did.
Can I go into a little more depth on that?
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Well, because I didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah, he mentioned it.
I mentioned Effie briefly.
Yeah, you mentioned Effie, but that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I mean,
and I've heard about that before, so
Yeah.
I didn't. But
Yeah.
yeah,
They
the
called
Texans,
them the
they're
Naota
not going to
Golden
know.
Girls. That show
Yeah.
was like in its popularity back then. So,
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you
Yeah,
could,
but
you could
thankfully
definitely
none-
say more.
thankfully, none of them had the politics of B. Arthur. But anyways,
Yeah, so if you could go a little bit more in depth in that, that would be
Sure.
great, and that go with the same thing.
Well, as I said earlier, there was a young lady on the street in Naota on August 21st, 1920, when Harry got off that train and received a hero's welcome after his vote for suffrage. It was 10-year-old Effie Raper. She went on to become a teacher and married Homer Lonis and became known as Mrs. Lonis or Miss Effie. After she retired as a teacher, she decided to get into politics. She was not the first woman mayor in Nauta's history, but when she ran for mayor in 1988 at the age of 79, no one else was running for the city commission seats. There was no one on the ballot. She was running for mayor, the others are separately voted in, so she recruited some of her friends from all different walks of life. They had somebody who worked in a business, somebody who worked in a hairdresser, somebody who worked, I think, in some sort of other public office before, who was retired. And most of them, I believe, were retirement age. I think only 2 of the 6 were actually under retirement age. And they all got together and they started a writing campaign. They went around and knocked on doors all over Naota, which of course that doesn't take very long. Naota has 900 people, I think, back then, never having over 1,000 people. And they were elected. Every single one of them were elected. They had and they did the research, the only all-woman city government, or city board, city council, whatever you want to call it, commission, alderman, in the entire country. And once the press found out that they were the only ones in the whole country, they all visited Naota. The Good Morning America actually called them, and they actually went to Los Angeles to appear on that program. Some of them did. I know Mary Lonis did, and Boots Snyder did. She's the only one still living. She's still up in Naota on Snyder Hill. And so it was just a really proud moment for the town that they had these great public servants who stepped up when the town needed them. They just happened to be all women. So they did a great job.
And the mayor or the postal clerk or postal
Yes, and in 1995, when they were celebrating the 75th anniversary of this amendment, the postmaster was a woman, Frances Powers, who helped get the stamp of Harry T. Byrne unveiled and canceled in Naota. And the current postmaster is also a woman, Sharon Leverett, and the current Naota mayor is a woman, Lois Priest, who also played a big part along with Frances Powers and our current postmaster, Sharon Leverett, in getting this stamp for the 100th anniversary unveiled and canceled in Naota. I just thought it'd be nice to share, and she didn't do anything.
Well, yeah. But when Boots finds out she was a retirement age, you're done.
No, I know. I only said some of them were above retirement age. I said no. She was a young girl. She was like 50. So.
Yeah, she was sort of the poster child, and
Yeah.
she was a really good-looking lady at
Oh,
that age.
yeah.
And she she have a boutique, a women's boutique shop?
She's one of
That was
those-
a different one that had that.
She's one of the kind of women I hate that always look like they came out of the
Oh,
hat box. I
yeah.
mean, hair
But you
perfectly
just-
secured, the stylish.
Oh yeah, she has
clothing, beautiful
blonder hair
jewelry.
than,
Even we had a meeting Monday night. You weren't there, but of the group, and we've already done this to a don't turn let's turn
Okay.
it. But what was sort of funny is that we had to take pictures again. And you remember the last time you were up there, we took pictures.
Oh, yeah.
We took pictures in this room, we took pictures in that room, we took pictures in that room, and we had to go from room to room. And the only person that ever complained was Boots. So we had to do them over again. Monday. And we were standing, we were setting, we were not too close, we were not, boots move from this side to that side.
And by the way, that depot is the oldest standing depot in the state of Tennessee,
And-
1854.
And they estimate one of the 10 oldest in the country, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And I think it's really fascinating, too, talking about the tie-in with Tennessee and Texas, that, you know, talking about Tennessee, the mother state of Texas, and Texas voted, you know, it's
yeah.
kind of that same strong women
No.
Oh, there's this professor.
heritage. Yeah.
Well, he's a professor in Connecticut, but he got his law degree at UT Austin. And he always says, I went to UT, not that other school in Tennessee. And I'm thinking, listen here, buddy. Tennessee is an older state. We come first in the alphabet, but that's irrelevant. What's relevant is Tennesseans came down there and made Texas independence possible. So don't give me this crap about the real UT. University of Tennessee founded 1794 as Blount College in Knoxville. I don't even think the University of Texas was even founded until like the 19th century. But I did notice this. I hate this. They have ut.edu.
They have what?
ut.edu, the domain name, but UT Knoxville has to have UTK. They missed that on that one. I bet Texas could probably pay for it. It's probably had more money to pay for it.
I tried to straighten them out when I was out there. I told them we'd have another Rhode Island if it wasn't for Tennessee. You know, and you know, half the people out here are from Tennessee, more than half. But we tried to straighten them out. It didn't work real well. But our GTT,
I
And-
figured they
and it
had
was
to
supposed to
say
come back to
UTK
this-
because of UTC.
Well, that's just a way to differentiate them, I guess.
and he mentioned, I find the greatest architecture that was ever in the county was the college that you talked about now. That's what we call the Red Elephant.
The
The
U.S.
beautiful
Grant University.
became U.S. Grant
He
University.
can send you a picture of it.
But it was just gorgeous. There was a company that came here that developed North Athens as a different city
Mm-hmm.
and had a lot of money, and then they went belly up.
Oh.
But they built this grand hotel, fantastic hotel.
And the view would have been incredible.
Oh, it was, yeah. Haven't you ever seen the
North
pictures from that?
Carolina. Yeah.
There's pictures up there, and it's shooting out this way towards 11. And it's nothing but farm fields. And you see one cow, I think there's one cow in the pasture, is all you see from that up there. But it was just a gorgeous building. And it burned in, I met this lady back in the 60s, and she lived up in North Athens, and she remembers it burning. But it burned in something like 1909 or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't even standing a decade.
Oh, no.
Not even that long.
No. It was